From CBS News Bay Area, this is the Evening Edition.
Now it takes risk for the Redwoods.
You can look at historical photos where there are essentially no large mature trees left in any of these locations.
How one organization is fighting off the White House when it comes to saving trees.
Plus millions of dollars for a new park misplaced by a nonprofit.
I actually can't even believe somebody would do that.
Why the biggest victims may be the families waiting for a new playground.
And later, flying tortillas, centipedes, and crazy costumes can only mean Max Darrow is out running with Beta Breakers.
A little over 3 miles in. Ditched the sweatshirt. That hill was killer.
And you can run along with Max on today's big race. Live from the CBS studios in San Francisco, I'm Brian Hackney.
And I'm Andrea Nakano. We want to begin tonight with some Redwood Refuge.
Back in March, President Trump issued an executive order to increase production of lumber on federal lands, calling it a matter of national security.
But conservation groups have fought hard to preserve America's forests for the future, including one that on this day was celebrating its past. John Ramos has that story.
When America set out to settle the West, there was a sense that nature knew no bounds. But at a certain point, people realized there was a limit to natural resources, and they needed to be protected. It was the birth of the conservation movement, and in some ways, it started right here in the Santa Cruz Mountains. Roaring Camp in the Santa Cruz Mountains is a replica of an Old West mining town in the 1800s. But with tall trees towering overhead, it may not have looked exactly like this back then.
So there was clear-cut logging throughout the Santa Cruz Mountains. Clear-cut logging means that any tree that can be cut and sold for a commercial benefit or used for a commercial benefit is cut and sold. You can look at historical photos where there are essentially no large mature trees left in any of these locations.
That's because back then the forests were considered an economic resource to be exploited, and not much thought was given to leaving anything behind. But around the turn of the century, it began to dawn on people that it was possible to lose the majestic forests, and the Sempervirens Fund was born.
And so they banded together, acquired the land for conservation purposes, and that really set in motion the California state parks, eventually the national parks as well.
They've been preserving redwood forest land ever since, and on this day, Sempervirens celebrated its 125th anniversary as the group that invented the concept of the Conservation Land Trust.
Redwood forest must exist and flourish in order that we can exist and flourish.
It wasn't just about, oh, let's conserve the environment, otherwise, something bad's going to happen in the future. It was just that these are sort of almost like a national treasure that needs to be conserved for future generations and not just kind of exploited.
And that's why President Trump's vision of the nation's forest as an economic asset has many in the conservation movement worried that the past may be repeating itself. Lee and Alice Pullen were out hiking amongst the trees with mementos from the national parks they've visited.
Glorious and peaceful. It's just relaxing. You need it in our lives with so much hustle bustle.
Lee, who's 83, once worked in a sawmill in Montana. He sees the importance of both lumber production and preserving the beauty of nature.
I'm glad there's a balance. You need a balance. You can't go this way, you can go crazy the other way. So don't cut any trees to mow them all down. I'm in the middle.
There's not a lot of middle ground in the country these days. It feels like people who can see both sides are becoming as rare as the old-growth redwood trees themselves.
And now on to Fire Watch. Crews responding to a 2-alarm fire in Concord. You're looking at time-lapse video from a Cal Fire camera, and we're told flames came from inside a home and spread to a second home. The initial fire was knocked out, but crews are still out there trying to douse several palm trees that have caught on fire. Animal control has been called out for an injured animal.
Another fire over in Contra Costa County, a brush fire that might have started as a car fire. This happened just south of Highway 4 in Vasco Road near Brentwood this afternoon. Time-lapse shows the moment that it started. Crews say it burned about 50 acres, and it is now under control. And with more on all of this, here's Darren.
Well, you know that's wind-driven, and man, we've been getting hit by the wind from both sides this weekend. I want to show you what I mean by that, because no doubt you've noticed it's been windy out there. I want to show you where we were yesterday, when we really had an issue out here off the coast. Look at these red streamlines coming down from the northern edge of the coast and racing all the way down the coastline yesterday. So strong that the National Weather Service actually had to issue a storm force wind warning once again out here just outside the bay. There were 50-mile-an-hour gusts there. We didn't feel 50-mile-an-hour gusts here at home, but we certainly felt 25 to 30-mile-an-hour winds. That was yesterday. Today, it's a totally different story. So I want to show you how the winds have transitioned for us and what we're going to look at on here now. Instead of watching the winds that were racing down the coast yesterday, this is the wind for today. Look what it's doing. Those are all winds that are going offshore now. It's a change in the direction, but it's still just as windy in terms of the way most of us would experience it, only now the concern is different. Now the concern is the fire weather, because now you've got these northerly winds rushing down the valley here and giving you those fire weather concerns. And look at the part of the bay that is affected by this. Most of it is the Central Valley, but if we just scale this closer to home, Solano County is included in that. Fire weather concerns until 9 o'clock tomorrow night. I'll be back with the rest of our forecast in a bit. Some of us are going to 90 in just a few days. I'll show you that soon. For now, guys, back to you.
All righty, thank you, Darren. Well, it's the middle of May, therefore it must be beta break.
More than 25,000 people officially came out for the annual run, with thousands more joining the route along the way.
One of the Max Darrow ran the race earlier this morning, and if you didn't, well, here's what you missed.
When the tortillas go flying, you know Beta Breakers is about to begin.
Nobody really knows where this tradition dates back to, but it is the ceremonial, unofficial start to Beta Breakers. Let's go.
3, 2, 1! And with that, we were off. 25,000 officially registered people and thousands more running the 113th Beta Breakers. That first mile down Howard Street was a breeze.
First mile down, 6.45 to go.
I saw a lot of centipede runners like these folks, 13 to 15 people running together tied by a bungee cord. It's a tradition that dates back to 1978. More on that in just a moment, but first.
Mile 2, finishing our way through Civic Center and headed on in to Hayes Valley.
Hills are hard, especially daunting when you can see what's coming from a ways away. My inner monologue at this moment, uh-oh. Let's skip this next part.
A little over 3 miles in. Ditched the sweatshirt. That hill was killer. We're moving and grooving, baby.
We made our way past Sutro Tower and into Golden Gate Park. That's where I met some interesting people who decided to go out for a casual 12K, like Andrew in the teal jersey.
It's a perfect day.
And you dressed up as...
I'll be honest, it's a group costume and I've split with my friends. It's Flint Tropics, never seen the movie though.
It's Will Ferrell, in case you didn't know, yes. But anyway.
And then somehow I met this guy who had quite a connection to one of the things that makes this race so unique.
You're with the original 1978 Centipede?
Yes, sir.
From UC Davis?
Yes.
What's your name?
For the Aggies, Fred King.
Fred King.
And lucky me, because they're up ahead of me. I'm trying to catch them in the last mile here. We'll see if I can do that.
Well, it's an awesome tradition, man.
They had to wrap that interview short so he could blitz ahead.
Home stretch, mile 7.
My calves starting to tighten up, my body slowing down. It was that fresh ocean air that propelled me over the finish line.
The first time ever. Glad I did it.
Medal acquired. A great success.
Well, the 4th annual Bay Area Student Barber Expo in Oakland had an extra special function today. It was also an expungement clinic, helping people with criminal records get a second chance with a clean slate.
Explain what an expungement event is. I said, don't think about it as an expungement event. Think about it as a life-changing event. Think about it as a door-opening event. Think about it as an opportunity-providing event. As they say on Sunday, I'm not going to leave the way I came.
1 in 5 California residents have some sort of record, which can be an obstacle in finding work or permanent housing. Expungement clinics like these are being held across the state for people without lawyers to get the process started to clear their records.
Well, a nonprofit that works to beautify parks, or at least is supposed to, in open spaces, is accused of mismanaging millions of dollars.
The money was supposed to go to smaller organizations to fund new playgrounds, but it's now gone. Dahlin reports.
Some families waited 6 years for a new playground at the spot, but most of the donated money to build that playground is gone, leaving the donor and families very upset.
So the first phase when we came here was ending, and the money that we donated was supposed to go to a park here and a park over there for, the children in the neighborhood.
Nicola Miner and her family's Baker Street Foundation donated $3 million to the San Francisco Parks Alliance to build 2 playgrounds at Crane Cove Park. She learned a couple of days ago the nonprofit reportedly spent most of that money, $1.9 million, on general expenditures.
I wanted a park here. That was what our money was for. Money was not for general operating expenses. And so I just feel a real sense of betrayal.
Nicola says the biggest victims are the families that have been waiting for the playgrounds.
The fact that they took money away from families, I'm speechless. I actually can't even believe somebody would do that.
Neighbor R.J. Andrews and his family live 2 blocks away. Like many people who live in this landlocked dog patch neighborhood, they've been wondering, where are the promised playgrounds?
When they broke ground, we were so excited, even more excited to learn that there's going to be a playground coming. And that was a long time ago. That was 6-7 years ago when those first plans came out. That pad has been sitting empty since the park opened in 2020. And since 2020, we've grown a family.
Their son, Atlas, celebrated his 4th birthday at Crane Cove Park on Sunday. And they're expecting a second child in a couple of weeks.
We have a lot of great new parks. We have a Bayview Park. Esprit Park was just redeveloped. There's one in front of the hospital, a small park. None of them have playgrounds. All right, so to go to a playground, we actually have to take a bit of a trek.
The Parks Alliance previously said the 2 playgrounds and a new dog park would open in June next month. But no money means no construction.
A disappointment?
The Parks Alliance distributes private money to city projects and helps smaller organizations collect donations. The San Francisco Chronicle reports the nonprofit used at least $3.8 million earmarked for specific projects to cover operating expenses. The previous CEO and CFO are no longer with the organization. The new CEO released a statement that reads in part, SFPA is working hard to correct the errors of the past and begin a new era of transparency and fiscal accountability with our community partners and with the city and county of San Francisco.
I haven't heard them apologize at all.
Nicola demands a criminal investigation. She says families deserve to know where the money really went.
I just think it's gone. I don't think there's going to be parks here for a while.
The future of the 2 playgrounds now up in the air. Nicola filed a complaint with the state attorney general. She plans to file a complaint with the city attorney as well. It's unclear if there'll be a criminal investigation.
The Chronicle reports a few small organizations that bank their donation money with the Parks Alliance have had a hard time getting their money out.
And now there are real concerns that the Park Alliance will simply shut down. We are getting more details on an apparent pepper spray incident at a San Francisco BART station. Happened at the Powell Street station yesterday afternoon. Police say they got a call about the incident involving at least 2 people who had to be taken to the hospital. As for exactly what happened, that is still under investigation. Coming up, it has been 45 years since Mount St Helens erupted. I'll look at that event. And we have our own volcanoes that we'll be talking about, and we'll do that next. Well, welcome back. It is hard to believe it's been 45 years since Mount St Helens blew its top. An eruption so powerful, it killed 57 people. It sent parts of Washington state all the way to Montana. Noticeable volcanic activity began a month before the eruption with a series of earthquakes and a minor eruption on March 27th, 1980. 2 pilots describe what it was like flying around that peak before the eruption.
That's how close we were when we were doing those 360s. And the other thing about those days, it smelled so bad up there.
Oh, yeah.
The sulfur smell, the rotten egg smell was so bad. But I don't remember that smell on this day, the eruption day.
Yeah, that's that hole that was bubbling and getting ready to go.
Yeah, well, it blew its top at 8:32 in the morning on that Sunday morning in May of 1980. Well, that was 1980. This is now. And if you think erupting volcanoes are only a problem for Hawaii and the Pacific Northwest, well, we have a research geologist in to correct that errant notion. Jessica Ball is with the California Volcano Observatory. Jessica, first, thank you for taking time on this Sunday evening to talk to us. Was there one big takeaway in terms of what we learned from Mount St. Helens?
Yes, there was. We learned that not only do volcanoes give us some notice before they're going to erupt, but we learned that volcanoes can do things that we're not necessarily expecting. So Mount St. Helens eruption was actually the first time that geologists saw a volcano lose its flank in one of these massive landslides. And that was a wake-up call that maybe that kind of thing could happen elsewhere in the Cascades.
Well, speaking of things happening elsewhere, it was just a week after Mount St. Helens, so everybody's on edge from that. And then Mammoth Mountain gets jackhammered by four magnitude 6+ quakes in 24 hours. So suddenly the focus is on Mammoth Mountain. Nothing really happened as a result, but here's my question. We've got our own volcanoes. Which is most likely to erupt for us in our lifetime?
Oh, that's a tricky question.
I know it is.
Geologists like to think about it in terms of what's the most threatening volcano that might erupt in our lifetime. Obviously, we had Lassen Peak in 1914 and to 1917, and that was spectacular, but there weren't very many people there at the time. Nowadays, we have a lot of people living near some of our volcanoes like Mount Shasta, Mammoth Lakes, obviously, even places like Clear Lake. And so we think about it in terms of what would be damaged or who would be hurt or inconvenienced or forced to leave if one of these volcanoes was to erupt again.
Okay, so let me ask you, let me just stop you there, because I know that there's risk from any time you live in the shadow of a volcano or not even in the shadow, but we don't have it set out according to likelihood of which one might be the next one to go in California?
Well, you can calculate that. There's always a way to do that math, but volcanoes don't erupt on a schedule. So you could say there's a percentage that it'll erupt in the next 30 years, but really what we do is pay attention to precursors. We keep a close eye on things so that we notice if a volcano is getting ready to
So
erupt.
you're listening for quake. By the way, where you're at I think people would be surprised to find out we even have a California Volcanoes Observatory. Where is it?
We do. We used to be in Menlo Park, and now we're at Moffett Field, so we're co-located with NASA Ames.
Okay. Can we just go through a little laundry list of the volcanoes that we actually have in California? I guess we start up at Mount Shasta.
Right. So Mount Shasta, Medicine Lake, and Lassen are the three volcanoes that are sort of the southernmost tip of the Cascade volcanic zone, volcanic arc, which is what Mount St. Helens is part of. Then we have Clear Lake, which is one of our coastal volcanic fields. It's got a whole bunch of different features in it. We have the Long Valley volcanic region, so obviously Mammoth Lakes.
Yep.
Yuba-Kibi Craters is one of our, we think of them as a one-off volcano. It's one that erupted once, but it might not erupt again.
The one in Death Valley?
Yes, the one in Death Valley. Yuba-Kibi Craters is one of our volcanoes.
I stood on its rim many a time. You know, Jessica, I could talk to you all evening about these volcanoes in California. One last thing. Nothing has been shaken up lately, right? There's no little tantalizing seismic activity in any of the volcanoes in California lately, right?
Oh, fortunately not. Our volcanoes have behaved very well, and they're actually really quiet this week.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to you continuing to monitor that. And if it changes, we'll be talking. Jessica Ball out of California Volcanoes Observatory, to Darren Peck and the latest with the forecast. Darren?
Well, we got to talk about these temperatures today, Brian, because we covered the wind. Wind's probably the most important feature in the forecast at this point, and I'll touch on the fire weather concerns again a bit for the Central Valley. But I want to spend the first part of this visit getting you ready for a stair step in the temperatures each day, tomorrow through Wednesday, And by Wednesday, some of us are going to be at 90 for the inland valley. So let's get our bearings here. We'll get the view over the bay. You've got your color codes on here. These were today's numbers generally. I'll just pick out some of the representative spots for today before I fill in everybody's highs for tomorrow. Just want you to see where we were. It's only in the mid-70s in San Jose today. You're in the low 80s for the inland East Bay, and you can see the numbers in the North Bay there. We're warming up to the low 80s. All right, let's transition this now, because you're going to see the colors are going to start shading a slightly deeper shade and color of orange and red as they start to fill in the valley. These are the numbers for tomorrow. And when you take a look at tomorrow's numbers, we've already started to jump. I'll get out of the way so you can all see your part of the bay. There's Los Gatos right on the verge of 80, and we'll see temperatures climbing well into the 80s if you're inland. By Tuesday, you go up another 3 or 4 degrees from here. By Wednesday, you go up another 4 or 5 degrees from that. Let's look at Wednesday on here now. We'll say goodbye to these numbers, and we're just going to give you the visual on here for what the numbers on Wednesday will be corresponding to. A lot deeper shades of red on here. And it's going to be warm enough in some of these inland valleys by the time we get to Wednesday, and I put this on Wednesday, 4 o'clock, you see the time code way up there on the corner of the screen. These are the areas, these inland valleys, where we're going to have a minor issue from a heat concern. So let's bring up that forecast imagery that the National Weather Service likes to message when we're going to be looking at some of our greater concern for heat-related health impacts. And when we take a look at California as a whole, you kind of pick out the areas in orange. Let's come closer to home. Same locations we were just looking at in the Central Valley. This is Wednesday afternoon. Most of us are doing okay in the yellow here. You're going to have daytime highs in the mid-80s for most of our locations in the Bay. But you will be getting to the 90s for places like the Tri-Valley, Concord, through Napa. And when you get into around 89, 90 degrees this time of year, you do run into some concerns there from heat-related health impacts. And that's something just to be mindful of over the course of the middle of this week. Let me show you what it looks like in a 7-day forecast. Wednesday's going to stand out, but of course, after that, you get a nice little break. So we'll bring in the numbers there. Those are the numbers for the Bay. Temperatures will start out and pretty much stay in the mid-70s for the next few days. And then they'll cool down as we get into the later part of the week. And if we can pull up our 7-day forecast for our inland microclimate, I can show you how that will play out by the middle of the week. And there are those numbers getting close to 90 in general. Now, where it says 88 on Wednesday, if you're in Concord or Livermore, you should actually hit 90. Antioch will probably hit 90 as well. Good news after that is look, start cooling down. By next weekend, back into the mid-70s.
From CBS News Bay Area, this is the Evening Edition.
Welcome back. Now at 6:30. Sad news from former President Joe Biden tonight as his personal office announces that he has been diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer.
Biden was evaluated last week for a new finding of a prostate nodule after experiencing increasing urinary symptoms. The former president is now reviewing treatment options with doctors. And here with us is Dr. Samuel Washington from UCSF. Dr. Washington is a surgeon who specializes in oncology. Thank you for joining us tonight. First question I want to ask you is, how advanced is this type of cancer? We've heard terms like Gleason score 9, grade group 5. What does this all mean?
Yeah, the Gleason score or the grade group all tell us what it looks like under a microscope. Basically, the Gleason score ranges up to 10. So a 9 out of 10 tells us that this is the type of cancer that needs some form of treatment, needs to get addressed and diagnosed before it has an opportunity to spread.
So we're talking about treatments. You think, okay, that's surgery and then chemo. Is that what you would recommend in a case like this? Or for someone that's over 80 years old, are there other forms of treatments available now?
Thankfully for prostate cancer, there are many different options depending on when we catch the cancer. If we find the cancer is just inside the prostate, organ confined is the term we used, surgery, which is what I do, or radiation are the two things we often think about, along with others for less aggressive forms, like active surveillance, for example, for low-risk disease. For disease that I believe for him was reported to be outside of the prostate and in the bone, now we discuss that surgery may not be a good option. We should use other medicines that treat the whole body systemically. Chemotherapy is one of the things that we think of the most, but oftentimes for prostate cancer, we use medicines that bring the testosterone down, and then other medicines that treat the entire body. Chemotherapy being one of the tools that we use, but not the only one.
Okay. I want to ask you about this recent study that you did. It found that an alarming rise in advanced prostate cancer here in the state of California. What do you see is behind that surge?
I wish we could pin it on one thing. I think from the study, we found that it varies not just by where you live in California, but also what racial group you're in, the geographic area you live in. And we know from clinical work, it depends on when you get tested, when you get followed up, diagnosed, and staged. So getting those tests early to understand where the disease may be can only improve the numbers that we're starting to see rise, unfortunately.
Yeah, we always hear early testing is the key. Dr. Washington, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
In other news, tens of thousands were in attendance today in Vatican City, where Pope Leo XIV held his inaugural Mass, including Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. This marks the official start of the papacy for the first ever U.S.-born pope. CBS's Christian Benavides has more.
The faithful packed St. Peter's Square in Vatican City Sunday for the inaugural Mass of Pope Leo XIV, the 267th leader of the Catholic Church. The service marks the official start of his ministry. The first ever American pope toured the crowd in his popemobile, saying hello to pilgrims who gathered from around the world. Leo prayed in front of St. Peter's tomb before Mass began. He was then presented with two major symbols of the papacy, the pallium, representing a lamb being carried by a shepherd's shoulder, followed by the fisherman's ring, named because Peter, a fisherman by trade, was instructed by Christ to be a fisher of men. There was excitement, particularly among Americans, there to witness history.
It's a great honor for God to choose and to bless the choice of the cardinals of a cardinal from America. So for me, it's exciting.
Approximately 200 foreign delegations were in attendance, representing the U.S., Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
Well, what started as a competition between the Bay Area and LA has grown into a global challenge. We're bringing you this week's Project Earth next.
And here we are, today's Project Earth. And it's an interesting one. A community science project began 10 years ago as a friendly competition between San Francisco and LA.
Yeah, the goal was to see which city could document the most wildlife near their home. Now, the City Nature Challenge involves hundreds of cities across 6 continents and more than 100,000 volunteers. Ann Makovic has more.
South of San Francisco, the massive waves at Mavericks draw surfers from around the world. But what lies hidden beneath these cold waters, where the land meets the Pacific Ocean, is equally jaw-dropping. Seen only at low tide, it is a world teeming with life.
This place is one of the places that you can come at low tide and you can see the greatest diversity of life.
Every time it's so amazing.
This is an absolute wow moment, for sure.
Recently, at the crack of dawn, a group gathered at Mavericks to document that life. Among them, mother and daughter Christy and Kelly Bracken.
We're making observations. We're being citizen scientists.
Yes.
The team is participating in an international event called the City Nature Challenge. Once a year for the past 10 years, people from around the world photograph all the wildlife they can find in their communities.
People have made over 7 million observations of nature, and this gives us like a ongoing annual census of where species are across the globe.
Rebecca Johnson at the California Academy of Sciences is a co-founder of the challenge. She calls Mavericks magical.
If you really focus on a tiny place, you can see this like huge diversity of things, right? You can see seaweeds, crabs, shrimps, sponges, anemones.
Mom. Oh, wow, look at all those. What are they?
650 different species live in the tide pools alone.
We're looking at a pair of ochre sea stars.
Hi, Guy.
Wait for the camera.
You can look here. These are mussels, California mussels. And you can see on them we have some barnacles
that are growing.
This
guy.
tiny guy. Perhaps the most mesmerizing find, the vibrantly colored creature known as a nudibranch.
Officially has made the trip worthwhile.
Armed with smartphones, the team snaps pictures of all the wildlife they see.
This place is a really amazing hotspot for biodiversity.
A special app identifies the species and shares the photos with scientists who study long-term trends.
It's an early warning system often in what is going on in these very delicate ecosystems.
The rising tide signals it's time to go. This mother and daughter leave with a new appreciation.
With the current changing climate, we don't know how long we'll have the ability to see these creatures and see them prospering, and unless we make really rapid changes to preserve their habitat.
So that we can just be more aware and take better care of our Earth.
Along with the world often hidden from view.
By the way, we have the results. La Paz, Bolivia, clocked in with the highest number of observations and participants, but we did okay in our own way.
We do okay. As for San Francisco Bay Area, we beat LA, so it applies in sports and the environment as well, in observations, species, and participants.
Now, if we could just do it in baseball, we'd be fine.
Always have hope. All right, coming up, a look at the devastating storms across the country and a touching moment of a man reuniting with his dog. We will have the story when we come back. Storm systems across parts of the Midwest and the South have led to at least 27 deaths.
Kentucky being hardest hit as a tornado leveled neighborhoods, tossed vehicles, and left a lot of people without their homes.
And while residents return to what's left, there's some positive news. One Kentucky man sifting through rubble found his dog alive and well. He says his family wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for his mother.
Thanks, Mom.
For what?
She's the one that saved us. If she hadn't called, we wouldn't, none of us would have been in the basement.
So you have your mom to thank for your family being
Love
alive.
you, Mom.
Well, the system also spawned tornadoes in Wisconsin, brought extreme heat to Texas, and covered parts of Illinois in dust on an otherwise sunny day. Darren, what do you know about all of that?
Well, that system, man, well, it was the same, at least a piece of that energy is what came through here about the last 24 to 36 hours. We felt the wind from it. But now that it's gone, things have really quieted down. We're just looking at a few clouds popping up over the Sierra. We're over here, and there's not really much to be seen. There's the bay right off the edge of the screen there. Things have really quieted down for us here at home, and we've got a much better situation than what we'd had. In terms of the wind, let me just show you how that is now starting to change direction. Those were the 50-mile-an-hour gusts off the coast yesterday. We don't have that now. What we have now instead are the winds that are starting to transition to a little bit more of an offshore breeze, and that's giving us some fire weather concerns. So that's probably where we should draw our attention for a moment. Central Valley and Solano County, highlighted in a red flag warning. Here we go. It's that time of year now where we got to start turning our attention towards drying grass and brush and strong offshore winds. Now, if we bring that back to the Bay, it's not terribly widespread here. The North Bay Mountains are not included in this. The East Bay Hills are not included in this. The only part of the Bay that we would consider would be Solano County, and even at that with Vallejo and all your drying grass. And then, of course, if you go a little bit outside the Bay, get towards Vacaville and Fairfield out there. That red flag warning stays in effect until 9 o'clock tomorrow night. So you've got to get through really the next 24 hours out there with a bit of concern just from the fire weather standpoint. Temperatures are really the focus of this forecast. If you look at what we did today for daytime highs, pick out a couple of representative spots on here to see where you were, because I want to bring you ahead in time to show you how tomorrow's going to feel warmer. So we're going to say goodbye to today's numbers, and we're going to transition into the warmer shades of tomorrow. And when we do that, we'll fill in everybody's highs. It's your Monday. About 3 or 4 degrees warmer than you were today. But the numbers are going to keep climbing from there. And as we get towards Wednesday, the numbers are going to peak, and we're going to see temperatures that get to near 90 for some of those warmest inland locations. And that's what stands out in the 7-day forecast. So let's just skip straight ahead into that, and I'll show you what to expect. In terms of Wednesday being the peak, for inland locations, 88 is the general number, but some spots will likely hit 90 on Wednesday. Concord and Livermore, I've got you guys hitting 90. Antioch, you'll probably get to like 91, 92. But you don't stay long. Things will cool down once we get back here, and as we approach next weekend, another system's going to try and come into the west. We're not getting rain. Might get a bit breezy, and we'll certainly cool down. So for next weekend, we'll see the temperatures that dip right back down into the mid-70s. Let's do that now for the Bay, and we'll check out the forecast on here for the Bay's microclimate, which never really gets quite as warm. But even at that, a lot of numbers here, staying in the mid to upper 70s for the next few days. Not breaking records, but you will be seeing temps about 7, 8 degrees above average for this time of year. So it's going to be nice for the next few days, and there's going to be less wind. The one concern with wind is not here in the Bay. It's on Monday, and it's for Solano County. And after that, things will calm down. And sure, the Bay will also cool down a bit as we approach the end of the weekend next weekend. All right, guys, back to you.
All righty, Darren, thank you. Coming up next, shrooms could soon be used to treat Parkinson's. We're hearing from one patient who said it has made a huge difference. That's next. Welcome back. From magic to modern medicine, the psychedelic compound in magic mushrooms now being tested to treat Parkinson's.
Max Darrow spoke with one patient who says the treatment is life-changing.
On a quiet plot of land in rural New Mexico, Jeff Deming feels like he's really living once again.
Mentally, just night and day.
He's able to do the things that make him happy, like woodworking, despite living with Parkinson's disease.
And I'll be honest with you, I mean, physically, I feel better than I did 2-3 years ago.
And Jeff credits treatment he received during a first-of-its-kind clinical study he participated in at UCSF, psilocybin therapy for people with Parkinson's.
This is very cliche, but it truly gave me my life back.
Psilocybin is a naturally occurring psychedelic compound found in so-called magic mushrooms. When administered in a controlled clinical setting, it's shown promise in treating depression and anxiety, both of which are mood symptoms that go hand in hand with Parkinson's that are linked to a faster physical decline.
We were really surprised by how well this trial went.
Dr. Ellen Bradley and a team of researchers at UCSF are trying to figure out how psilocybin may help treat mood dysfunction and more in those living with this neurodegenerative disease.
This is a first step, and now we've opened the door to being able to really investigate the effects of psilocybin for people with Parkinson's.
12 patients participated in the study, which started and finished here, with transcranial magnetic stimulation, as demonstrated here by her team, to look at the brain before and after 2 psilocybin therapy sessions.
We want to find out not just does psilocybin therapy work, but if it does, and how does it work? And that mechanistic piece is so important. Can it change the brain's ability to adapt to its environment and rewire itself?
Per the study, all 12 Parkinson's patients were able to receive 2 doses of psilocybin 2 weeks apart without any serious side effects. Now, every patient didn't have the same life-changing experience as Jeff says he did, and that was to be expected, says Bradley. But others did also report improvement with their motor and cognitive functions.
So that was really exciting just to see that promising safety profile in this initial pilot that kind of gives us, a green light to go forward with more in-depth research. We really desperately need new treatments for Parkinson's. We really feel like we have to be investigating every possible route that could mean new treatments for patients.
Something about this experience just freed everything back up so that I could think again, I could dream again.
Jeff is now 2 years removed from his controlled psilocybin dosing, and he says he feels better now than he did when he was diagnosed 4 years ago.
There's been such stigma against the research with it.
He'd like to see more research into psychedelic therapies for a variety of conditions.
It is definitely worth looking more closely at.
All with the hope that maybe more people will also be able to reclaim the reins of life.
It's good to be Greek at this weekend's Greek Festival in Oakland, held on the grounds of the Greek Orthodox Cathedral of the Ascension. The 3-day festival celebrates Greek culture, music, and food, but what's it like if you've never been?
This is my first time here, and it's a really impressive event.
All the different cultures, different people, all kind of coming together.
And today is the last day of the festival, but it runs until 9 o'clock tonight. So if you're looking for a way to end the weekend, you can go and check it all out.
Perfect. Time for a dinner break.
Time for a dinner break.
I can
Let's go.
smell the moussaka now.
Thanks for watching. 60 Minutes is next, and we'll see you back
Who
here
am
at
I
11.
kidding? I'm getting the spanakopita.
There you go.
That's
All
more
right.
me.
Baklava.
Amazing.
Something like that. Until then, the news continues streaming on CBS News Bay Area. We'll see you at 11. Good night, everyone.